Growing up, I always thought I was part of a normal American family. You know, the kind that eats dinner together, argues over Monopoly on Christmas Eve, and cheers each other on at school plays. But behind closed doors, it was never equal. And it didn't take long before I realized I wasn't the son they favored. That role had already been given to my younger brother, Alex. Alex was the miracle baby. Mom had a tough pregnancy with him, and for the first few years, he was constantly sick. Breathing issues, hospital visits, constant worry. I was around 10 when he was born, and I remember sitting in those cold hospital waiting rooms, clutching vending machine snacks, while my parents hovered over his bed like he was made of glass. Even after he got better, the dynamic never changed. He was still the fragile one, the special one. And me? I became the responsible older brother. At 7, I was expected to act like an adult, get straight A's, never talk back, do extra chores, and never complain. If Alex skipped school, it was because he needed rest. If he broke something expensive, don't be mad, he's been through so much. But when I got detention for being late once, I was grounded for a week. It only got worse with time. By the time I turned 15, I started working weekends in my dad's electrical business, not because I was passionate about it, but because it was the only way I could get his attention. I studied the trade harder than I studied for school. I stayed late, watched tutorials online, even shadowed my dad on tough jobs just hoping he'd finally look at me with pride. He never did. Not really. Meanwhile, Alex breezed through life. He dropped out of college after one semester, burned through a few failed business ventures, including some crypto nonsense, and somehow he was always forgiven, always propped up, always the one Dad protected. I loved my brother, I really did, but I also resented him more than I could admit out loud, because no matter how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed in my family's eyes, I was always second place. When I met Sophie, everything changed. It was 6 years ago. I was working on a rewiring job at a high-end apartment complex downtown, one of the biggest projects we'd taken on. Sophie was the property manager. I remember watching her go toe-to-toe with some HVAC guys, calling them out on sloppy ductwork and quoting building code like she wrote it. That confidence, that precision. I hadn't seen that before, not in a job site, not from anyone. Most property managers I'd worked with only cared about keeping costs low and moving on fast. Sophie wasn't like that. She actually cared about how the work was done and why. She'd come by the site during her rounds, asking real questions, listening to my explanations, sometimes even pointing out things I hadn't noticed. I started timing my lunch breaks to match her visits. We'd talk about the job, about family, about how exhausting it was to always be the responsible one while our siblings ran wild. Turns out her younger brother was also the golden child, some hotshot lawyer with a taste for drama and a long list of get-out-of-jail-free passes, courtesy of their parents. We laughed about it, almost like therapy. 2 siblings raised in the shadows, finally being seen. A week after the project ended, she called our office claiming her apartment had an emergency electrical issue. My dad sent me. Nothing was wrong. She just wanted to see me again. That moment, that was the first time I felt like someone chose me. Sophie and I started dating soon after. No games, no guessing. Just honest conversations and deep connection. She supported me not just emotionally, but in the business too. She helped me prep for my journeyman license, streamlined our invoices, revamped our ancient filing system. She even suggested digital contracts, something my dad fought at first but couldn't deny improved everything. After 2 years, we moved in together. Sophie joked about our future kids becoming electricians and running the family business. For once, I allowed myself to dream. With Sophie, I finally had hope, not just for love, but for a future that didn't leave me behind. And for the first time in my life, I thought I had something Alex couldn't take away. Looking back, the signs were there. But when you trust someone, when you've built your life around them, your mind finds a way to justify everything. It started about a year ago. Subtle things at first. Sophie began spending more time at my parents' house, helping Mom with wedding plans and supposedly training Alex on our updated billing system. It made sense on paper. I was swamped with field work, trying to land bigger clients and save for our future. She said it was just easier to work from there. I didn't question it, but then came the shift. Sophie changed her phone password. It caught me off guard because we had always known each other's codes. When I asked, she brushed it off with something about new security updates on her banking app. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Alex, too, was suddenly different. The guy who used to roll out of bed in the same wrinkled shirt from yesterday now showed up on time, clean-shaven, even wearing cologne. He was helping around the office, volunteering to stay late, asking questions about scheduling. Sophie praised him more than usual. "Alex is really stepping up," she'd say. "Maybe you've been too hard on him." I'd spent my whole life cleaning up after Alex, and now he was being handed a fresh slate and my fiancé was the one handing it to him. Even the atmosphere at the office changed. Janet, our receptionist, who'd known us both since high school, started giving me these long, unreadable looks. I'd ask if something was going on, and she'd just smile thinly and say, "You'd know if it was." There was one night, I'll never forget it, when I came home early from a site. We were out of materials, so I figured I'd knock off early and surprise Sophie. When I walked into the office, she and Alex were in the break room laughing at something on her phone. They both jumped like they'd been caught. She said they were reviewing invoices. At 7 p.m.? Still, I told myself not to be that guy. The jealous type, the paranoid type. I trusted Sophie. I wanted to believe in her. And that belief blinded me to the betrayal that was already unfolding right in front of me. 6 months before everything collapsed, Sophie began to pull away. It wasn't sudden, more like a slow fade, the kind you don't notice until the silence becomes unbearable. We had a big family dinner at my parents' house one Sunday. Normally, Sophie would be the center of conversation, chatting with Mom, helping in the kitchen, asking Dad about business leads. But that evening, she barely said a word. She kept checking her phone under the table. I tried to catch her eye a few times, but she avoided it. Alex, on the other hand, was full of energy. He kept cracking these inside jokes with Sophie, little one-liners that only the two of them seemed to get. At one point, he made a comment about that crazy customer, and Sophie burst out laughing. When I asked what was so funny, they both just shrugged. "You had to be there," Alex said, still grinning. The whole thing felt off. On the drive home, I couldn't keep it in. "You seemed a little distant tonight. Everything okay?" She sighed, eyes still on her phone. "Just tired, work's been crazy." I hesitated, then added, "You and Alex seem to be getting along these days." That made her stiffen. "He's not as bad as you always say. He's actually pretty funny when you give him a chance." That hit me sideways. Sophie had never defended Alex before. She used to roll her eyes at his laziness, his screw-ups. Now suddenly, she was on Team Alex? "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "Nothing," she snapped. "Just that maybe if you gave him half a chance instead of constantly tearing him down, you'd see he's not so bad." We didn't say much the rest of the way home. That night, I lay in bed beside her while she scrolled through her phone, the light flickering across her face. My gut told me something was wrong, but I still couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. I stared at the ceiling, willing the feeling to go away. Because if I said it, if I named the fear, I'd have to face the truth, and the truth was far more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. The months that followed were a blur of long workdays and longer nights. I buried myself in projects, convincing myself that if I just worked harder, everything would go back to normal. Sophie, meanwhile, spent more and more time at my parents' house, supposedly helping with wedding planning and teaching Alex our new billing software. She told me it was easier to get work done there since the office was quieter. I believed her. I wanted to believe her, but things didn't feel right. She stopped visiting job sites with me, the thing that used to be ours. We'd once sat side by side with coffee cups and clipboards, solving problems like a team. Now, I was eating lunch alone in my truck while she stayed late at the office with Alex. There were moments, fleeting ones, where I could see through the cracks, like when she changed her phone's password without telling me, or when Alex started showing up to work freshly shaved and dressed like someone who gave a damn. That was new. Even Janet, our longtime receptionist and practically family, began acting strangely. She gave me these looks, like she knew something but couldn't bring herself to say it. I asked her once if something was going on. She hesitated, then said, "Nothing you need to worry about," and quickly turned away. Then came the moment everything shattered. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just finished a complex wiring job at a commercial site. My phone rang. Sophie. She was crying, barely able to speak. "I need to talk. It's urgent," she said. I thought someone had died. I rushed home to find her sitting in her car, white-knuckled hands on the steering wheel. I climbed in beside her, heart pounding. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. I felt a burst of joy. We'd talked about kids. We wanted a family. That's great," I said, reaching for her hand. She flinched. "There's more," she choked out. It might not be yours." The air in my lungs disappeared. I stared at her, silent. My voice finally broke through, cold and unfamiliar. "Is it Alex?" Sophie broke. She didn't have to say yes. Her silence was loud enough. Everything, the years of loyalty, sacrifice, the love. I felt it all collapse in an instant. I don't remember the drive to my parents' house. Just flashes, my knuckles tight around the steering wheel. My heart thudding so loud it drowned out the world. I wasn't thinking. I was just moving, on some primal autopilot fueled by rage and heartbreak. When I stormed into Dad's office, Alex was there. Of course he was, sitting at my old desk sipping coffee like he hadn't just set fire to my entire life. His eyes locked on mine, and for a split second I thought he might apologize. But instead, he had the audacity to say, "Bro, I can explain." That word, bro, lit something inside me. The next thing I knew, Alex was on the floor, blood gushing from his nose, and two of our longtime employees were pulling me off him. One of them, Jerry, I think, kept shouting, "Stop! You'll kill him!" Maybe I would have. Dad rushed in, yelling at both of us to calm down, to be adults. Then Alex, bruised and still bleeding, looked up and dropped another bomb. "She's pregnant, and the baby's mine." The room went silent. Mom gasped, hand over her mouth. Dad turned pale like someone had drained the blood from his face. Janet, our receptionist of 15 years and practically family, didn't say a word. She just picked up her purse and walked out. I found out later she quit that day. I looked at my father, this man I'd spent my whole life trying to impress, and said, "He's your problem now. I'm done." Dad tried to stop me. "Wait, son, please, family is family." I turned, looking at him one last time. Alex stopped being family the second he slept with my fiancée. When I got back to my house, Sophie was still there, sitting on the couch crying, her bags half packed. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "You had a choice," I snapped. "You both did." She asked what would happen now. "What about the baby?" "If it's mine," I told her coldly, "we'll go through lawyers. If it's not, then you and Alex can play house, but I'm done." And with that, I walked upstairs and shut the door behind me, leaving the wreckage where it belonged, on the floor with them. For the next week, I crashed at my friend Mike's place. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a spare key and a cold beer. I didn't have the strength to explain. I barely turned on my phone. When I finally did, I had dozens of missed calls, mostly from my parents. A few were from Sophie. 2, unbelievably, were from Alex. I ignored them all, except Mom's voicemails. Her voice trembled in every message, begging me to come home. "Your father wants to fix this," she said. "Please, we just need to talk." Fix this? I knew better, but the guilt worked, and I went. Walking into that living room felt like stepping into a warped version of reality. My mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. My dad sat in his recliner, calm and collected like he was about to pitch a business plan. Alex, bruised nose and all, sat stiffly on the couch. Dad cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about how we move forward as a family." I braced myself. "Since you and Sophie are clearly done, and given the pregnancy, I believe it makes sense for her and Alex to marry." I laughed, out loud. It sounded so absurd, so sick, I couldn't help it. But he wasn't done. "And since they'll be starting a family, I think it's time Alex officially takes over the business." My jaw clenched. He was serious. "With Sophie's skills and Alex learning the trade, they'll make a great team," Dad added. "You want me to train him?" I asked, stunned. Dad didn't even flinch. "It's time you let go of the past." I looked at Alex, who couldn't even meet my eyes. My fists curled again. So let me get this straight. You're rewarding him for stealing my fiancé? Watch your tone, Dad snapped. This business is still in my name. And there it was, the truth behind every family-first speech he ever gave. Power. I stood up slowly. You can keep your business. You can keep Alex. You can even keep the fantasy that this family still exists. Mom sobbed, but I didn't look back. I walked out, and this time I swore to myself I wasn't coming back. The next morning, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I started calling every major client I had brought into the business: contractors, property managers, local developers, people who trusted me, not my last name. I let them know I was stepping away from the company and gave them referrals to a few reputable electricians in the area. I never badmouthed my father or Alex. I didn't have to. One client sighed and said, "Figured something was off. It hasn't been the same without you." That afternoon, Dad called, furious. "You're trying to ruin this family," he barked. "You're sabotaging everything I built." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just making sure people get the quality they deserve. It's not my fault if they don't want to work with Alex." He hung up on me. 2 weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Alex and Sophie had gotten married. No ceremony, just a courthouse formality. Apparently, they even smiled for pictures, like they weren't standing on top of the rubble they'd created. And my father? He rewarded them, a down payment on a house, my childhood home no less. The house where I grew up, learned to patch drywall, and wired my first circuit, now theirs, a reward for betrayal. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a friend's couch, trying to make sense of a life that had just imploded. There was no apology, no accountability, just this unspoken expectation that I'd get over it, that I'd come back eventually, tail between my legs, and accept whatever scraps the family offered me. But I didn't. Instead, I took a job offer from one of our biggest competitors. Better pay, better benefits, and most importantly, respect. For the first time, I was being seen for what I actually brought to the table. 6 months later, I passed my master electrician exam, something Dad had always said I wasn't ready for. Turns out, all I needed was to walk away from his shadow. They had chosen Alex. Now, I was choosing me. I hadn't heard much from my family in months. I kept my distance. The occasional text from Mom was the only thread still tying me to them, and even those were brief, almost guilty in tone. "Hope you're doing well," or "just checking in." Then, late one night, my phone rang. It was Mom. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Your dad. He needs to talk to you, please." I almost hung up, but something in her voice, raw and panicked, stopped me. I stayed on the line. Dad came on next, and for the first time in my life, he didn't sound angry or self-righteous. He sounded defeated. "Son, we're about to lose everything," he said. "The business, the house, it's all collapsing." I didn't say anything. I just listened. Alex, as it turned out, had done exactly what I warned him about. He'd taken on commercial jobs way above his skill level and butchered them. Basic mistakes, incorrect wiring, no permits, unsecured panels. One client was threatening a lawsuit after a failed inspection revealed code violations that could have led to a fire. It got worse. Instead of hiring licensed electricians, Alex had brought in his college drinking buddy, someone who thought hot and neutral were personality traits. He hadn't paid the liability insurance, so now they were exposed legally. Checks had bounced, clients had walked, the senior staff had quit. Even Janet, who had worked there longer than anyone, had walked away months ago. And the money? Gone. Alex had been taking cash payments under the table and funneling them into who knows what, probably that new car and those designer clothes he started flashing around. The business my dad spent 30 years building was circling the drain. "I need you," Dad said quietly. "Come back, help me fix it. You'll have full control, majority ownership, everything." I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was tired. Alex had destroyed what I spent a decade helping to build, and now they wanted me to clean up his mess? I told him I'd think about it, but in my heart, I already knew the answer. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my kitchen staring at the folder Dad had handed me, official paperwork to transfer 100% of the business to me. No strings attached, full ownership. 6 months ago, that would have meant the world to me. I spent years dreaming of the day he'd finally acknowledge my work, my vision, my worth. But now? It felt like scraps, like a peace offering thrown on the floor after they handed the whole feast to Alex. And speaking of Alex, where was he? Gone, Dad muttered, eyes hollow. He cleared out the savings account and disappeared, left a note saying he needed to find himself. Classic Alex, burn everything down and vanish before the smoke clears. I stared at Dad, this broken man who had always barked orders, always demanded loyalty, now reduced to begging. You chose him, I said. You saw who he was, and you still handed him the keys. I warned you. I begged you. I know, he said quietly. I was wrong. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe. Relief. Satisfaction. But there was nothing left inside me to give. He tried to sell me on the idea again. We can rebuild, together. This can still be your legacy. My legacy? I laughed bitterly. You gave my legacy to the guy who screwed my fiancé and burned it to the ground. Now you want me to fix it? I was trying to do what was best for the family. No, I said. You were trying to save Alex, like always. He asked about Mom. I told him she could stay with me any time, but just her, not him, not Alex. She won't leave me, he whispered. Then that's her choice, I replied, but I'm not setting myself on fire to keep you warm anymore. He sat there for a long time, saying nothing. Then he stood, looking 20 years older, and left. That was the last time I saw him. A text came the next morning. Mom said they were moving in with her sister in Ohio. Starting over, she said. But me? I was already there and I wasn't looking back. A few days after Dad left, I got a text that landed like a gut punch. It was from Sophie. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need help. The baby is yours. I got the test results. Alex took all my money and disappeared. Please, I don't have anywhere else to go. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. I couldn't. It should have meant something. Should have triggered some wave of emotion. Anger, sadness, maybe even relief. But all I felt was tired. Bone-deep exhaustion from months of betrayal and loss. It was like the universe had wrung every drop of pain from me, and now there was nothing left. Still, the truth hit hard. The baby was mine, my child, not Alex's. And yet, instead of joy, it felt like being handed a responsibility soaked in grief. How was I supposed to celebrate something born from betrayal? That night, I barely slept. I kept wondering if I was heartless for ignoring Sophie's message. But every time I considered responding, I remembered that look in her eyes when she told me it just happened with my brother. The secrecy, the lies, the months of gaslighting. This wasn't just about a baby. It was about a woman I trusted with my future turning into the final crack in the foundation of my family. The next evening, as I pulled into my driveway after work, I saw someone sitting on my front steps. It was Dad. He looked worn down, old in a way I'd never seen before. His jacket was threadbare and his eyes hollow. I just want to talk, he said, voice raspy. I didn't invite him in, but I didn't send him away either. We stood outside in the cool air as he told me everything. The lawsuits, the debt, the clients they lost, how Sophie had taught Alex to doctor the books and then disappeared when it all fell apart, how Alex cleaned out the last of the family's money and vanished like smoke. Then he said, I should have listened to you. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from him. And you know what? It didn't change anything. Dad stood in my front yard holding a folder, documents inside, crisp and legal. This is everything, he said. The business, full control, no strings attached. 6 months ago, this would have been the moment I lived for. Proof that I was worthy, that my work, my loyalty had finally been recognized. But standing there staring at that folder, I felt nothing but a hollow ache. I'm not coming back, I said quietly. That part of my life is over. But you could save it, he pleaded. You could fix what Alex broke. I looked at him. This man who had poured everything into a son who never lifted a finger and overlooked the one who did everything he could just to be seen. "You chose him, Dad," I said. "Even after everything, you gave him the keys to my future and watched him burn it to the ground." He didn't argue. For once, he had no lecture, no guilt to dish out, just silence. Then he said, "He's gone. Cleared the savings. Sophie left. We're losing the house. Your mom, she's trying to hold it together." That hit harder than I expected. Mom didn't deserve this. She had tried in her own way to keep us connected. "You can come here," I told him, "just you." His eyes widened. "Not your mother?" "She's welcome anytime," I replied. "You're not." The truth settled like dust between us. I didn't owe him anything, not anymore. That night, I sat alone and reread Sophie's text again. The child was mine, a piece of me. I wasn't going to abandon them, no matter how broken the past was, but I wasn't going to be played anymore either. So I replied, just one line, "Contact my lawyer. We'll set up custody and support." That was it. No comfort, no opening. Just a legal bridge between me and the child I didn't ask for, but wouldn't walk away from. I've started dating again, slowly, carefully. I haven't told her the whole story. Not yet, maybe one day. For now, I'm building something new, something untouched by betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, it's peace.